What if I told you that the greatest basketball player of all time once gave someone a second chance at life, and no one ever knew about it? It was a cold autumn night in Chicago, the city lights flickering against the dark sky. Michael Jordan, now retired, was out for a late drive when he found himself in an old neighborhood, one he hadn't visited in years. As he slowed down near a dimly lit street court, he noticed a lone figure sitting on the bench, head buried in his hands. Jordan parked, watching for a moment. The figure, a young man, probably in his early 20s, looked lost. His duffel bag lay at his feet, a basketball rolling slightly with the wind. Something about the scene felt too familiar. Jordan stepped out of his car and walked toward the court. "Rough night," he called out. The young man didn't even flinch. "More like a rough life," he muttered. Jordan sat beside him. "Want to talk about it?" The young man finally looked up. His face was bruised, a small cut just above his eyebrow. "It's over for me, man," he said. Jordan glanced at the basketball resting near his feet. "You play?" The young man scoffed. "Not anymore." Jordan picked up the ball and spun it in his hands. "How about one last game?" The young man frowned. "With you?" Jordan grinned. "Unless you're scared." Something flickered in the young man's eyes. A challenge. He slowly stood up, wiping his face. "First to 11?" Jordan smirked. "Let's go." The game was on. The first few plays were clumsy. The young man was fast but unfocused. His movements were sharp, but his mind was somewhere else. Jordan saw it immediately. This wasn't just a game for him. He was fighting something bigger. "You got skills," Jordan said between plays. "But your head isn't in it." The young man ignored him. He went for a shot, missed. Jordan got the rebound, taking it back up the court. "Who told you you're not good enough?" Jordan asked. The young man hesitated. "Everyone." Jordan froze. Because suddenly he wasn't looking at a lost kid anymore. He was looking at himself, years ago. The game went on, but Jordan wasn't just playing, he was studying. Every hesitation, every missed shot, every moment of doubt. "Why'd you stop playing?" Jordan asked after a perfect fadeaway shot. The young man took a deep breath. "I got into some bad stuff. Wrong people. Wrong choices." He looked away. "Basketball doesn't change where I came from." Jordan bounced the ball back to him. "You sure about that?" The young man stared at the ball. Then something snapped. His next move was explosive. He drove past Jordan with a speed that caught him off guard. The ball hit the net perfectly. Jordan grinned. "Now that's more like it." Point after point, the intensity rose. The young man was a fighter, but Jordan could tell he wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting for himself. After a few more plays, they stood tied at 10-10. "Game point," Jordan said. The young man wiped sweat from his forehead. Then, out of nowhere, he hesitated. Jordan saw it instantly. "Don't stop now," he warned. The young man clenched his jaw. "I can't win against you." Jordan stepped forward. "You already won the moment you stopped doubting yourself." The young man locked eyes with him. Then he drove forward. One move, one jump, one perfect shot. The ball sank in. Jordan smiled. Game. Jordan sat on the bench, catching his breath. "So," he said, "you still think basketball doesn't change anything?" The young man stayed silent. Jordan leaned forward. "You got talent, but talent without a plan is wasted." He pulled something from his pocket, a business card. "Call this number," he said. "Tell them I sent you." The young man stared at it. "What is this?" "Your second chance." The next morning, the young man woke up before sunrise. He stared at the card Jordan had given him the night before, A second chance, a way out, a way forward. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed the number. "Jordan sent me," he said. A brief silence, then a firm voice replied, "Be at the gym at 6 a.m. No excuses." The young man didn't hesitate. This was his moment. That morning, he arrived at an old but well-maintained training facility. The air smelled of sweat and ambition. A group of young players were already stretching. Among them stood Coach Reynolds, an old-school trainer with a sharp gaze. "Jordan sent you, huh?" he said, scanning the young man. "Yes, sir," he replied. The coach gave a small nod. "Then let's see if you can survive." The next few weeks were brutal. Drills until his legs burned. Tougher competition than he had ever faced. Endless late nights reviewing plays. Each day his body ached. Each night, doubt crept into his mind. Am I really meant for this? But every time the doubt surfaced, he remembered the game with Jordan. He remembered how it felt to believe. And so he kept going. And then the call came. "We've got a spot for you. Scholarship. Full ride." His hands shook as he held the phone. "Are you sure?" he whispered. The coach laughed. "Michael Jordan doesn't just recommend anyone." Tears welled in his eyes. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from something. He was running towards something. Months later, the young man stepped onto the court for his first college game. The bright lights, the roaring crowd, the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. He took a deep breath. This is it. His name echoed through the stadium speakers. Starting for the North Carolina Tar Heels! Xavier Carter! He ran onto the court, his heart pounding. Then he saw him. Michael Jordan, sitting quietly in the stands. No cameras, no media, just watching. Their eyes met. Jordan gave a small nod, a silent message. "You belong here." Xavier swallowed hard. No more doubts, no more fear. This was his moment. The referee blew the whistle. First play. He got the ball. He moved fast, dodging the defense. He rose for the shot. The ball soared. Swish. Nothing but net. The stadium erupted. His teammates swarmed him, patting him on the back. The game continued, and with every play, his confidence grew. Fast break, another shot, another point. He wasn't just playing, he was thriving. Then, during a timeout, he glanced back at the stands. Jordan was gone. Xavier smiled to himself, because he finally understood. Jordan didn't need to stay. The lesson had already been learned. It's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. As he turned back toward the court, he whispered to himself, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. The game resumed, and Xavier Carter was just getting started. As Xavier walked off the court that night, he knew something had changed. Not just in the game, not just in his career, but in him. He had once thought his circumstances defined his future, but he had learned the truth. Opportunity is given to those who refuse to quit. Success is built on perseverance, and sometimes one conversation can change everything. As he packed his bag, a quote Jordan had once told him echoed in his mind. Some people want it to happen. Some wish it would happen. Others make it happen. Michael Jordan. And that night, Xavier Carter became one of the ones who made it happen.